Hello and welcome to part 3 of 3-part Solidworks tutorial series. If you missed part 2, then click here to check it. Now in this last part of the Solidworks video tutorial series, we'll learn about the advanced 3D modeling tools. We'll start with the Loft feature and then we'll explore lofting with guide curves, shell feature and sketch text. Later, we'll talk about wrap and 3D mirror features. Finally, we'll talk about creating patterns with rectangular and circular arrays and combining solids. If you want to explore full-length SolidWorks courses with more than 20 hours of video lessons from SolidWorks part modeling, assembly, drawing, rendering and more, backed by real-world projects and instructor support for Q&A, then check our SolidWorks course library on SourceCAD and start learning right now. Link is in the description of the video, or you can also click here to go to SolidWorks course library. You can enroll now for a very little subscription fee and you can cancel it anytime you want. So with that, let's get started. So now let's start with the Loft feature. So for the Loft feature, I'm going to use this drawing, and in this drawing, as you can see, we have a lot of these cross sections. Basically, the first one is ellipse and all of these other geometries are circles. They are all made on parallel planes. Now we can combine them all together to create a 3D solid using Loft feature. So I'll go to Loft here on the features command manager and I'll start with this lowermost ellipse. All right. So as I clicked here, it selected this point and this sketch as the first lofting cross section. Now I'll click on the second one and there it is. That's the second lofting cross section, and the point where I clicked will be, well, one of the base points. Now it's going to keep selecting the next set of geometries, and also the point of click will become the base point as highlighted by these green dots. So I'll click on this last one and here we are. We've got all of these features connected and that's our shape which we are going to get. Now if you want to hide these connectors, then all you need to do is just right click and go to hide all connectors. And that's going to hide it. I'll bring it back because we can do quite a lot with these connectors. So I'll go to show all connectors and it will show up again. Now using these connectors, you can change the twist angle. So if I move it here, the Loft will kind of twist. So after this, it's going to connect it with this point and then with this, and we'll get this kind of twisted shape. We can also move it here to create even a different kind of, well, lofted shape. So these connectors will decide eventually what kind of lofted feature you're going to get. Now you can also change the way these cross sections start and end. Now for that, you need to go to this option, start and constraint. So expand this, and here we have an option of starting constraint, which is set to default. I'll change that to normal to profile. And now just look at this one. So this is the first cross section, the starting cross section, and now here the lofted feature is starting at 90 degrees with respect to this ellipse. So that's because of this normal cross section. Now I'll change that for end constraint as well, and I'll make end constraint normal, and here also now it is starting exactly at 90 degrees and then it's turning towards other cross sections. All right, so once you are done making this feature and once you are done fine-tuning it, you can click OK and we've got our lofted feature. Now we can still make several modifications in this. So let's go to this Loft feature and go to edit feature, and here if you want, you can actually select all of these cross sections from the feature tree, and when you select it from feature tree, SolidWorks will do the precise selection for you. Let me show you how it works. So I'll go to this profile, right click, and I'll go to clear selection. And now instead of selecting cross sections here, I'll expand it, and here I'll start selecting from sketch number 1. So I'll select sketch 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and here we are. So now it will automatically make the selection and it will make this kind of profile. So all of these connectors are in straight line. For some reason this isn't, but we can bring it right about here, and now they're all in the straight line. So if you want more control, then instead of clicking on these cross sections, you can select it from here. So once again, if you are done, click OK. Now let's look at another example. So I've got this Loft bell file, which is again just bunch of circles. Now I'll start lofting it. So I'll go to Loft and I'll start with the first one right about here, then second, and then third, and then finally this one. Now this is going to just give you a bell kind of shape. Now in this case, if you want to make it hollow, you can go to this thin feature and add a thickness. For example, 1 mm is already added here. So with that 1 mm, we are going to get this kind of lofted feature, which is completely hollow from inside. Now in this case, the loft ended here abruptly, but that's not going to happen in a real world. It should be completely closed. So if you want to close it, you can add a point and then connect the loft sketches with point. Let me show you what I mean. So I'll press Ctrl Z, and now I'll first start with a new plane. So let's go to reference geometry and plane. I'll select an existing plane here, which is this top plane, and let's add height. So now I think slightly, there we are. So with 75 mm height, I'm just going to click OK. So we've got that plane. On this plane, I'm going to add just one single point. So I'll go to sketch, and here we have this point tool. I'll select it, and right here I'll add the point. Now click OK, and we are done. We've got the point added. So exit out of this sketch, and now we are going to make the loft again. So I'll go to features, loft, and once again I'll start with this, but now the end sketch is actually a point. So right here I'll select the point, and now it's going to merge it all at a point. Now in this case, you won't be able to select thin feature, because with thin feature the geometry is not at all possible, but you can, after making it, shell this entire thing to create a hollow shape, which also we'll see in a moment. So I'll just click OK, and there we are. We've got this lofted feature. Now let's go back to our main drawing, loft feature, and here let's talk about the guide curve. Now guide curve is another feature that we can use to further control the shape of loft. So for that, I'll just select this loft and I'm going to delete it. And here we have sketch number 6, which is hidden. I'll select it and I'll show it. All right, and now you can see we have, well, this kind of sketch. So let's go to loft and first create the loft feature. So I'll select all of these sketches one by one, just like we did previously. And this is the shape. Now, as you can see, the shape is not following this sketch, but let's say we want to create it in such a way that it follows this sketch. For that, I'll go to guide curve, and here I'll select the first guide curve. Now click OK. And here it is. From this side, it is now following the guide curve. If you want to do the same for other side, select this, click OK, and now it's going to follow the guide curve on second side too. Once you're satisfied, click OK, and there we are. We've got this lofted feature. Now let's talk about the shell feature. And for that, I'll open this shell feature file. Now this one is a completely solid file. It's actually the key of your keyboard, just the standard key. And here we want it to make hollow from bottom side. So for that, I'll use the shell feature, which is right here. So go to shell, and now start with the thickness. So I'll add a thickness of 1 mm for the shell, and now select the face that you want to remove. So in this case, I'll select the face right here, and that's the face which Solidworks will remove. Now there is no preview, so I'll click on show preview, and the preview will show up. So this is the yellow line. That's where the shelling will start. Actually, it will shell it from this yellow line, and we'll have this kind of hollow shape. Now currently it is removing material, but you can create material by selecting shell outward. Basically, when you select this, it will add material outside instead of removing it, and it will just remove whatever your original object is, but add extra 1 mm material on top of that to create the shell feature. Definitely we don't want that, so I'll uncheck this option. Alright, now there is one more option which is quite useful, and that's multi-thickness shell. If for some reason you want some walls of this 3D solid with different thickness, then you can select this multi-thickness option, click here, and then select the faces which you want with different thickness. For example, this one. Now I want 2 mm thickness for this, so I'll select this, and here I'll add 2 mm. Alright, now this one has 2 mm thickness. You can also add these fillets for 2 mm thickness. So I think it will make sense if we just add these fillets in 2 mm thickness. All right, now with that, I'll click OK. And here we are. We've got the shell feature where this is hollow. And not only that, this top surface is 2 mm thick. Let's check it. So I'll go to the section view, and let's move this section line inside, and you can now see it here. So that's 2 mm thickness, and this one is 1 mm. So it did created a shell feature with variable thicknesses. So I'll close the section view. Now let's talk about another 3D feature which is called wrap. And for that, I'll open the wrap feature file. Now before we discuss wrap feature, I will discuss another tool which is related to Sketch, and that tool is text. So you can add text in Solidworks quite easily. For adding text, all you need is a plane. So I've got this plane 1, which is at some distance from the cylinder. And on this plane, I'm going to add, well, text. So I'll select the plane, and I'll go to Sketch, and I'll select the Sketch tool. There we are. Now the text tool is right here. Select it, and start writing text. So here I'll type source_cad, and it will by default add the text here on origin. Now currently it is adding text with all the default settings, which means the settings are being used from your current document. Now if you want to modify these settings, then simply uncheck this use document font option and click on this font button. And now we have all the settings related to font. For example, it's using Century Gothic font, regular font style, and 3.5 mm text height. Well, let's change some of these. I'll first change the text font, which is, well, Arial. I want Arial, rounded, empty. All right, that's the font which I'm going to be using. Also, I'll make sure that bold is selected. And if you want a different height, you can add it here in proper units, or you can add it in points. I'll leave the default value and click OK. And here we are, we've got the font. Now another thing that I want to change is the location. I don't want it at origin, so I'll simply click anywhere in the drawing area and it's going to shift the origin of text to that point. I think I should move it slightly to the left. There we are, and now it looks good. So I'll leave this location, and with that, click OK. And we have the text added. So that's how you can add text. Now that we have text in our drawing, let's wrap it around this cylinder, and that we can do using this features tab, wrap feature. Now the wrap feature is a 3D tool, so it's not going to work in 2D sketch environment. And as you can see, we are in the sketch environment because this exit sketch is still active. So click this option to exit out of this sketch, and now click on wrap. All right, so let's see what options we have. After selecting wrap, you need to start with the sketch. Now this sketch is already selected because before selecting wrap, I already selected the sketch tool, and that's how you should start it. So if the sketch is not selected, then SolidWorks will prompt you to select the sketch, which is slightly difficult because it won't let you select it from here. You need to go to feature tree, and from here you need to make the selection. So it is always recommended that you start by selecting the sketch first. So you can just select the sketch like that and then click on wrap feature. It will automatically start with these settings. Alright, so now that it's started with the default settings, let's see what we have. So there are three wrap types. It will either emboss or deboss, which is make groove, or it will just imprint it, which is scribe option. You can select any of these. Let's select emboss. Now you can select the wrapping method. Right now I'm selecting analytical because it's just not going to make any difference for the cylindrical shape. If however you have a very weird kind of shape made with splines, you can select the second one here. But for now, the first analytical option is just fine. Now, select the surface where you want to wrap it. So I'll select the cylindrical one, and it is kind of not allowing me to select it. It looks like for some reason, the sketch is deselected, but that's okay. We'll select the sketch again. So let's go to sketch and select it from here. Now that sketch is selected, we can add the surface on which we want to imprint it. So select the surface, and there we are. Now it will imprint it right about here. Okay, so that's not all. You also need to specify the height. So height of emboss is 1 mm. I think that's just about right. So with that height, I'll click OK. And here we are. Now the text is embossed here on the cylinder. You can add features like fillets to make it smooth if you want. Now finally, let's talk about creating patterns. Now for the pattern, I'm going to start with the linear pattern file. So here we have a file with this handle, plate, and some features here. Now we want to create several patterns of these two features, but before I do that, I want to create a mirror image of this. I want a mirror image on this side. Now for that, of course, we'll use the mirror tool, but for mirroring, we need a mirroring plane. So we need to make it first. Now to make the mirroring plane, you need to go to this reference geometry and select plane. Now we have already discussed making planes previously in the part 2 of this video series. So if you haven't seen part 2, I'd recommend you check that one first. But still here, we'll explore this feature again. So here we have plane. Now I'll zoom in and I'll select the first plane right about here. And then I'll select the second reference, which is this plane. And that's it. It will automatically create a plane which is right in between our selection. So with that, click OK, and we have the mid plane added. Now that we have mid plane, we can use it to create the mirror feature. Before that, let me hide this message. And now I'll go to mirror tool. So here we need to start with the mirroring plane, which we just now created. So select the plane. Now select the feature. Now the feature is right here. So go to this feature option directly and then select this handle. Done. We have the mirrored feature. If for some reason the preview is not visible, then check this option in the options panel. Once done, click OK, and we have the mirrored object. Now we have done it. Let's make patterns of this. So I'll just go to this plane 2 and hide it. And now we'll go to linear pattern right here, select that tool. Now we need to start with direction. So we can assign two direction 1 and direction 2. And also we can assign direction using two methods. We can actually select an edge. For example, here you can select the edge and that will be our direction. Or instead of selecting an edge, let me select this, right click and clear selection. Well, instead of selecting edge, you can also select a plane. Now, when you select a plane, Solidworks will assign the perpendicular direction of that plane as the direction. So if that's the plane, the perpendicular is either this or this. And you can actually see that using this arrow. So the arrow is pointing here, which means that's the direction. But of course, we don't want that. So I'll click on this arrow to reverse it. Alternatively, you can also click here to reverse the direction. Now for direction 2, I'll select this plane right here. And here also the arrow is pointing here. I want to reverse it. So I'll click right about here and that's reversed. So here is the second direction. Now the next thing is our feature. So these are the features that we need to select. So I'll just select this feature and that's done. Now specify the number of objects. So we've got 9 objects here in direction 1 and 3 objects in direction 2, but none of these objects are visible and that's because of preview. So scroll down this list and here in the options, we have an option called partial preview and full. Select full preview and the preview will show up. Okay, so preview is now visible. Let's add the values. So I think we should add more objects here. So we've got 3, I'll add 4 or maybe 5 objects here. And here the gap is 10. Let's make it 9. All right, that looks about right. Now I'll go to direction 1 and here number of object is 9 and the gap is 10. Well, let's make number of object as 10 and the gap as 9.6 and that's again about right. So we've got all of these objects here. Now in this case, if you want to skip some of the objects, then you can go to this option, instances to skip. The pink dot will show up. Now select the pink dot which you don't want to see in this drawing. So here I don't want to see these two and these two pink dots. All right, they're gone. Actually, I'll just select these two as well. Okay, so that's the kind of pattern which we are going to get. Once you're satisfied with this, click OK and we have this kind of pattern. Now I'll repeat the process for the second one as well. So I'll once again go to linear pattern and this time I'll quickly do it for you. So that's the first direction. Since arrow is pointing here, I'll click to reverse it. I'll select the second direction and once again I'll click this arrow to reverse the direction. And now let's change the parameters here. So the feature is this one here and I'll just change that. It's already selecting a feature. I'll uncheck this. So I'll add clear selection and then I'll select this feature right here. All right, so that's selected. Now let's change number of objects and let's make it 4 along this direction, direction 2 and 9 along direction 1. All right. Look at this from the top and it looks like it's properly added right where it should be. The only thing which I'll maybe skip is just few of these instances here. So these two, I'll just skip it. And with that, I'll click OK and we have this linear pattern created. So that's how you can create linear pattern. Now let's see the circular pattern. And I'll also close all the other files that are currently open. Now here we have this base plate and we have got this bar here and then this one here. Now these three are actually made with 3 different bodies. They are not just features. So this plate is one of the bodies here. That's this first one. Then we have Q fillet. That's this one. And then we have simple fillet. That's this one. So we have 3 separate bodies here. Of course, these are also visible here as features, but they are slightly different than what we saw earlier. Now let's see what it is. So let's assume that this is just the face of a clock and these are the 5-minute markers and these are 1-minute markers and we want to add it here on the face of this clock. For that, I'll simply go to this circular pattern here from the features command manager. And the first thing is direction. So let's just select this edge for direction. That's selected. Now the next thing is features and faces. Now, as I mentioned, these things are not features. So if I select feature and then select any of these objects, well, Solidworks will give us this kind of error message. So instead of selecting feature, we'll select bodies. And now if you select it, Solidworks will easily select it. So maybe I'll just zoom in a bit, kind of like this, and there we are. Now it easily selected it. So here we need 12 instances of this. So the first thing that I'm going to change here is number of objects, which is set to 60. I'll make it 12. All right. So for every number on the clock. All right. And that's about it. We don't want to change anything else in this. So with that, we can click OK. But before I do that, let me show you this option here. So that's 360 degrees and 12 is the number of objects. Since we select these two options properly, we've got this. But if you want to spread all of these objects maybe along 180 degree, you can do that here. So 180, and now 12 objects will fill this 180 degree angle. So this is the angle which will control the spread of all of these arrays. So in this case, I'll change it back to 360 degrees. All right, and click OK. Now I'll repeat the process for the smaller one, and here I'll maybe close this message again, and let's go to linear pattern, circular pattern, and let's start again with direction, which is this edge. Now it's, as I mentioned, not feature, so I'll uncheck this and I'll check the bodies. Now the second body was right here, but it is kind of hidden now. It's no longer visible, and that's why I added a name for this, and that name is right here. So inside the solid bodies folder, we have this fillet 2. I'll select it, and there we are, we've got this selected. Now the number of objects here is 60. So we want 60 copies of this. So I'll type 60 and tab key. Now we have it all, but we don't want it on all of these while markers. So let's go to instances to skip, and we have the pink dots. Just click the pink dot for all of these objects. There we are. And we've got all of these added here. With that, we can click OK, and we have it added here. So now we have the face of this clock. So with the minute markers as well as the 5-minute marker or the simple numbers. Now, after adding all of these details, just look at the list of this complete bodies. I mean, this is huge. We've got 62 bodies now. The final list is quite big, and you can actually combine it all together into one unit. So you can just merge all of these things into a single body, and you can do that using the combine tool. For that, go to insert, feature, and right here in this list, we have a tool called combine. Select it, and from here, select add. Now select everything that you want to combine into one single body. In this case, I'll select it all. And now everything is selected. Go to show preview just in case you want to see the preview, and this is one single unit that we are going to get. Just click OK, and we now have one single body. The list is quite small, and now the list is also quite manageable. So we have a simplified drawing. The results are visually exactly the same, but the feature tree is much more manageable now. So that's how you can combine it all together into one. So that's part 3 of the 3-part SolidWorks video tutorial series. I'm sure you are now confident enough to make your own 3D parts in SolidWorks. Now, if you want to learn SolidWorks even further professionally with full-length courses, projects, and instructor support, then explore our SourceCAD SolidWorks course library that contains more than 20 hours of video content related to SolidWorks part modeling, assembly, rendering, drawing, and a lot more. All of this is available for a small subscription fee, and you can cancel it anytime you want. If you are not satisfied with the courses, we'll give you complete refund too, no questions asked. So click the link below to enroll now, and I'll see you in another video.